Welcome to another episode of Rail Industry Connected. I'm Dan Clark and thank you for joining us. Designing the railways is no easy task. The success and longevity of railway infrastructure is bolstered by a strong design process which considers elements such as health and safety, sustainability and collaboration with all key stakeholders. Today, we speak to a company that is celebrating its 10th anniversary. enGauged's core discipline is civil and structural engineering and the capability to deliver multidiscipline projects through supply chain partners, including services such as feasibility studies, options reports, outline and detailed design, site inspections and investigations, and topographical surveys. Today, I speak to Steve Whitmore, who is the Managing Director of enGauged, to find out more.
Steve, welcome, and first of all, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a busy 10 years.
So if you were to describe enGauged in just a minute or two, how would you describe the business and the services that it provides?
So we're a privately owned SME, headquarters based in Crewe in Cheshire, but operate throughout the UK. We are a building and civils design consultancy. We cover stations, buildings, depots, line-side equipment. From a civils point of view, we have a wide range of other SMEs we operate within to draw in some specialism, so we can do multidisciplinary design. So if we need station building with an M&E input, then we've got the likes of SVM Glasgow who would go and work with to deliver that wider scope. We're a developing business. We've got a wide amount of competency within our team, a lot of experience sitting in our senior team members, a growing younger team which are coming through doing education and career development. So generally quite well placed with a lot of experience on how the railway system operates. And so hopefully we can add some value on not tripping ourselves up with infrastructure solutions that don't work as a system.
So to set the scene, can you give us a bit of detail about how enGauged was formed?
So I'm 42 years in the rail industry this coming year. Worked for a mix of clients, contractors, obviously early doors with BR. Got to a point where I'd had a bit of an anchoring after setting my own business up for a little while. Came to a point with my employment with Network Rail where I'd achieved quite a lot, and I felt time was right to set my own business up. That was sort of coupled with having seen quite a lot of design coming through, which was generally not addressing buildability and construction issues. Right. It was very technically compliant design, but wasn't always addressing the most efficient way of building something. And at the time I thought, right, well, I'm going to go and set a business up and see if I can make a difference.
And obviously you have 10 years on, you're still here, so...
We're still here, not missed a mortgage payment yet.
Well, that's always a positive. So what gave you the passion to kind of go into this line of work anyway? I mean, obviously you've got that level of experience over the last 40 or so years. What's kept the passion burning for you?
I think I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the rail industry. It's a great place to work. It's where I haven't worked anywhere else since I left school, so I've been employed entirely within the rail industry. It's a great family atmosphere to work within. We're all striving for the same thing, which is to shift our passengers and freight across the country and add to the UK economy.
We acknowledge that the operational railway over the last decade, has changed significantly. How have you managed to capture the needs and address the challenges of that railway over time?
So it has changed a lot. So I've been sort of employed in the client organisation of Network Rail for 10 years before setting this business up 10 years ago. And I was on standards committees, I was organising events and CPD sessions and stuff within Network Rail, cutting edge of introducing Euro codes into Network Rail at the time. And so I understood exactly what the industry was needing. That has been difficult since I've left, because for the first year or two you've got a lot of contacts in places. You can people to phone up.
Of course.
But the industry is quite vibrant. People move around.
They do.
You lose those abilities to ring people up.
Yes.
And so that has been a challenge. However, I think I've tried to address that by keeping involved in initiatives that are running, groups that are running, such as the Health and Safety by Design Forum in Network Rail. That's a good ability to not only get a source of information, but able to contribute back into the industry, help develop and guide sort of young engineers forums, that sort of thing, where we know those sorts of things are happening. We can help try and support them where we can. Also, work I've been doing within the PWI sector for some time.
Yes.
Has helped, because it keeps you into contact and in conversations about developments within the industry, and that's very useful. That alongside keeping in touch with the tier ones that we're currently working for and trying to keep that flow of information coming through.
And I think what has been quite important, especially over the last decade, is the UK rail industry as a whole has been standardised, and obviously we're the pioneers of the railway, as it were, for the world. And having that level of experience and those experienced heads in the industry is so vital to keep it going and doing what it does. But how have you found adapting to emerging trends? I look at AI as an example and look at the development of technology even over the last 10 years. How are you adapting to address those challenges?
That's from an SME point of view, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because we need to be on it to offer a value for money solution.
Yes.
But the expenditure around developing that skill set internally obviously puts some financial pressure on when you've got a small business and you haven't got a lot of free cash flowing around. So that is difficult. We've taken some steps in some areas, not in others necessarily. I don't think we're using AI to its extent at the moment, and we're a bit behind the curve with that. Other areas that have developed over the last 10 years since I've set the business up, things like BIM modelling. It was very rare 10 years ago that you got a common data environment running. Only the bigger projects had that. Now that's cascading right down, and most work that we do and go out the door is out in MicroStation, it's out in ProjectWise or some other BIM environment where we've got collaboration and a common data environment to work within. So it's different across different bits of technology. I think as an SME, you're wanting to get involved in the next thing that's coming along, but you can't always do that. No. It tends to be a bit project-led sometimes, because the funding needs to be there to encourage you to do something. So
that's the mix, isn't it? It's that level of funding, but then actually, if you look at AI and how far it's developed, just going back to that as an example, it's still an emerging technology, as it were. So I guess it needs that level of experience to understand when you implement it at the right time, because it might not be fit for purpose now, but in a couple of years' time it needs to be. And then an SME, you need to be adaptable to that as well, I guess.
Yeah, and AI works in a number of different ways. I think some of the focused AI tools that are coming out, where it takes data, reads data, and comes up with some level of output, are very useful tools. We've seen it in health. We're starting to see it in the rail industry. There are some useful tools out there. You've got the more broader AI operating, sort of ChatGPT, Copilot, those sorts of things, where you've got to have that little bit of experience to challenge what you're being told. Because if you put a question in, I mean, we've all done it. We've all, put some question into ChatGPT and looked at the answer that's come and thought, really?
Exactly.
So you've got to have that little bit of experience to challenge that, and that's where I think we have a little bit of concern. And particularly, I talk to the guys in here. Some of the younger guys, don't just rely on what your computer tells you, because
100%.
it's not always going to be right. So you've got to have that little bit of sense check around
And balance. Completely agree. Obviously, talking about technology there and the changes that presents, but sustainability also has been a hot topic over the last 10 years and will be something that will need to be implemented further as we go along, especially as the race to net zero continues. How have you worked as an SME over the last 10 years, especially with those changes that have happened over that last decade?
Yeah, so it is. I mean, being 10 years in business this year is quite a milestone and quite an interesting track back to look at where we started 10 years ago and where things were. Sustainability was on the agenda. There was a big push about carbon reduction, particularly in concrete manufacturing and things of that area. It's still, I think, whilst we've moved a long way in the 10 years, I think there's still a lot more to be done. I think we've struggled a little bit to get, certainly in the carbon reductions area, we've struggled to get funding in place sometimes because they're not always the cheapest solution.
No.
And we don't generally, as an industry, measure whole life sustainability costs. So, and you can understand why. The asset engineering team have got a terrific job on their hands, balancing budget, trying to keep today's railway running, whilst trying to implement maintenance and renewals. And so you can't always, if you've got 6 platform renewals to do and somebody comes along with a great product that's going to actually extend the life of that platform by 30 years, are you going to be able to implement it if suddenly you can only do 5?
Yes.
And so there is that challenge all the while the asset teams have got to try and do this. Our trick is to try and find those products that are cost neutral and still give you some benefit of reduced carbon and reduced maintenance and a longer life. It's a bit of the holy grail, but that's, as a designer, what we've got to try and find to come up with the solutions that the industry can afford.
That's the additional challenge, isn't it, as a designer, is that you've got to implement this right from the very beginning and kind of ingrain it into the way of working, because you are generally setting out the blueprint for how this will be delivered.
Yeah.
So that's
I think we've seen an upsurge across the industry in different disciplines of SMEs actually fetching product to market. There's new innovation and ideas being generated all the time in various different areas, not just in the building and civils world that we tend to operate in. We had a trip out to Hand Plastics last year. It was a local company manufacturing recycled plastic lumber. So that effectively gives us a timber-like product.
Right.
So they're doing some development with Network Rail actually at the minute for fencing renewals, for King Post Wall. So companies like that are starting to come forward with more holistic solutions that are able to be implemented rather than just the odd little product here and there.
Yeah.
You've suddenly got a solution you can start to put together. So for us as a designer, that's where we need to be looking at utilising the manufacturer's knowledge base to try and improve our design.
And there's a lot out there as well, isn't there? In terms of the innovations that go on, you touch on fencing. That fencing company, as an example, might not even consider rail as an option. So how do you keep on top of those trends and see what's going on kind of in the wider environment? Obviously, as an SME, that's the challenge, isn't it?
It is, and so we find that so we exhibit at a number of the RIN events.
Yes,
We've had discussion there before.
Of course.
So attending those sorts of arenas, we attended Highways UK back in November last year. A number of different shows, exhibitions give you that ability to see what's going on in the marketplace. They're incredibly useful, along with CPD events that manufacturers put on. They're more than willing to come into the office or have a Teams call showing their current up-to-date products. And a lot of the manufacturers work across sector, so that's where the innovation can often come, because you can see a product that's never been in rail, but it's been used in highways, and it's that ability to spot those links and to fetch something across that will fix a solution.
Over the last decade, we look at the accreditations and what's required to work on the rail industry and the adaptations that SMEs have to make in order to meet those accreditations. What have you found useful over the last 10 years to help you gain those accreditations and actually focus on further accreditations that you need going forward in order to be able to do what you do?
I'm not sure I've found anything useful through that through that, to be fair. There are a great number of accreditations that we need to have in place. Some because we want to, because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Some because we need to have, and there's a lot of crossover between those two positions, really. So our clients are quite demanding on some accreditations that need to be in place. I mean, I suppose when we first set the business up, ISO 9001 was a bit of an automatic because we're in a service industry, so we needed that in place. So that was quite quick and easy, but fast on the back of that came the need for 14,001 for environment and 45,001 as it had just changed at the time for health and safety. So those three suddenly became quite important. And they were important because they form the foundation for us to be able to get risks accreditation, which is our ability to trade in the rail industry. So without that in place, so there's some building blocks here that lead up. Because of what we do, we're out on site, we're doing site surveys, we're doing various bits. Yeah. So PTS was a bit of a need, and so that triggered also the trackside module within risks, and for us to be able to operate our own Sentinel scheme. So so that came on very quickly in the first couple of years as being a need just to be able to trade. So there was a certain amount of we must do around that.
Yes.
After that, there's sort of a bit more of a selection, which is more around the work winning side of it, because it's about setting yourself slightly different than the competition, which is always a tough game because we're all striving for the same thing.
Exactly.
We've all got the same ideas. So eventually, you might gain a month or two here and there, but eventually we're all operating at the same level. But unless you are operating at that level, then you struggle to justify why contractor A is going to give you the work. So. The other things that start to come on top, I mean, obviously we're working in quite a sensitive industry. Data is a sensitive topic. So Cyber Essentials was also sitting on the side of something we needed to be able to demonstrate that we're in a credible position for people to give us data, and that we're not about to launch it into the ether or have it taken by somebody. So it's those sorts of things then quickly started to stack up. We've got other things that we then want to do. We approached Investors in People. Very pleased to get a silver award at first, knocking on Investors in People's door. So that was 3 years ago. We're up for our accreditation review this year, and we're hoping that maybe we're doing quite a lot of good stuff with our people metrics at the minute. So. Who knows what that will bring, but hopefully that will be a step up the ladder.